Yeah. I'm here for the soul. Let's make it snappy.
The Cuphead show is the textbook definition of fine. Everything in the show is fine. The style is fine, the characters are fine, the humour is fine.
There's no way we're going.
The art is fine. The show as a whole is fine. It's fine. It's decent. It's alright. It's other word for something slightly above average. The Cuphead show just didn't resonate with me as much as I really wanted it to. When I first heard the announcement that one of my favourite games from 2017, Cuphead, was getting an animated series, I was ecstatic. Think about all the great things they could do with a concept like the Cuphead TV show. The game was already so wildly creative and fresh, with a whole slew of ideas that were ripe for a great series. But then the show comes out and what do we get? An almost pedestrian cartoon aimed at a very young audience. Now, I don't think that things aimed at young audiences are inherently bad. Not at all. I still love shows like the early SpongeBob seasons. Gravity Falls is one of my favourite shows of all time. And Amphibia was pretty good. I also thoroughly enjoyed the new DuckTales show. But for a game like Cuphead, why did they pick the safest possible thing they could have done with it? But before I get into the problems with Cuphead and pals, let me speak to you for a second. Set the mood, editor. This is gonna be personal. Now, loving audience, here at Dreary Middle Incorporated, we want to ensure that you have the best possible experience you have here. And if you want more content, yeah, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, you know? This way, you'd be notified whenever we put out a new video. Isn't that great? And you know what it costs you? All of $0. I know, right? Crazy. So what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. I'll wait. Oh, this is the wait's killing me. Okay, you done? Alright, let's get back to the video. So when you look at a game like Cuphead, it was clear that the game could be aimed for anyone, because a lot of the animations that inspired Cuphead were based off productions that were aimed for adults too.
And there goes the gun that ends the game.
This was because, at the time, animation really wasn't aimed for adults or children, it was just aimed for anyone. It wasn't until later that animation took a huge shift into being aimed for children primarily.
Now stop talking, stupid. It's costing money.
So in order to capture that same feel, why didn't the Cuphead show go in a more adult direction? Not something adults could exclusively enjoy.
Would you like to see a picture of my kids?
But something with a bit of an edge to it. The Cuphead show feels nothing like the game tonally, because the premise of that game was that the people we were fighting, while silly, meant serious business, which transitioned into gameplay as the bosses were really tough. Meanwhile, the show is just kind of a problem of the week kind of show, with only the sweater episodes in the middle, and the very last episode having some kind of ongoing plot. What is that? I hear you ask. Well, let me tell you. So the show follows Cuphead and his brother Mugman. They're both cups. Get it? Okay. Anyway, they go to a carnival and they decide to play a game, and they do really good at the game, and then that attracts the attention of the devil, and then they play a game and Cuphead loses, and then he owes his soul to the devil, and the devil tries to get it, but they get away, and then the devil basically wants the soul for the rest of the show.
I'll get that cup.
Head?
Yeah, that's kind of all the show really has going for it. The show's tone is mainly portrayed as a comedy first, and that's kind of disappointing given that something based on this amazing game is so standard and wouldn't look out of place airing on something like a Nickelodeon or Disney Channel. And I know what a lot of people are thinking on this. This show's good because it's one of the better video game adaptations out there.
Monkey!
And that should be good enough, right?
Wrong!
All because you're the best in a shallow pond does not mean you're good, alright? It just means you're better than the rest. When you take Cuphead and put it next to other kids shows like Invader Zim or Gravity Falls, then it really falls short as a show, when other shows can be way more creative and interesting, whilst also being funnier than the show that promises you that.
What the hell are we doing? I'm supposed to be at the morgue identifying a body.
But seriously guys, is it really even one of the better video game adaptations at this point? The first adaptation of a video game I remember getting mass critical acclaim was Steins Gate, based on the visual novel. Now, you would think making an adaptation based off a visual novel would be really easy, because they're visual novels, right? It's all narrative, so it must be really easy to adapt that and put it into a game. Yeah, boy, you'd fucking think so. But no, a lot of visual novel adaptations suck, dude. Partly because visual novels are padded as is. It's not uncommon for a visual novel to hit 20 plus hours, and that's considered the short ones. Other visual novels can easily hit 40 or 50 hours. Especially if it's one of those non-linear ones that require multiple playthroughs. Like, no, leave me alone. I don't want to play the first few hours again just to see the new routes. Go away, leave me alone. Sorry, where was I? Oh yeah. Visual novels are cringe, dude. But what makes the Steins Gate adaptation work is it cut out a lot of the filler that actually managed to keep all the important plot points and character development from the visual novel. No matter what you think of the show, and I'm not even really a big fan of it myself, the people behind it had a high level of care for carrying over the spirit and tone of the visual novel to satisfy the fans, and yeah, that's what happens. I think it's fair to say the anime is a lot bigger than the actual game is at this point, and is an example of adapting the plot of a game into a show that anyone can enjoy. So already I have given you an example of a successful video game adaptation that respects the source material, and I get it. Steins Gate has way more of a story than something like Cuphead. Cuphead barely has a story at all, so how were you going to turn that into a whole series? Well, let's talk about another series based on a game that barely had a story. Castlevania. Now, this is based off Castlevania 3, an NES game with minimal story, and yet they managed to turn it into something of its own. Season 1 of the show was already great with the amazing action sequences and likeable characters, but the second season kicked it into high gear with a much more deeper look into Dracula and all the scheming that was happening in his council. It made for very compelling television, and transcends being just a video game adaptation. This show took a lot of liberties with an 8-bit game and made something truly special, ending with such a climactic final battle in its final season. I know Castlevania has a fair share of criticism, especially in regards to the creator's personal life, and there's people who really don't like the third season at all. But I thought the entire run was great, and holds up as a show on its own. I know people who have never touched Castlevania who loved the show, and that's a testament to the show's overall quality. So, what great creative liberties did the people behind the Cuphead show give us? They made the devil kind of a joke villain. Who you don't really take seriously. And, okay. King Dice has his own show now. And, the devil treats him like a goof, and he's only in one episode. And Elder Kettle is kind of a moron. That's something, right? Got to give it to Netflix, man. They went all out on this one, dude. Good job, guys. Yeah. Good job. Go Netflix. Woo. As I said at the beginning, all of this is just fine. It's not bad. I think the Devil and Elder Kettle are actually two of the best characters in the show. Mostly because I think Cuphead is a twat. And the show gets an occasional chuckle out of me. I kind of like the idea of that one episode where Elder Kettle thinks Cuphead and Mugman are going to kill him.
Please don't kill me.
That's pretty funny, but like, Why is that concept even in this show at all? Why are we applying that to Cuphead of all things? Cuphead should be exciting. The characters should be going on adventures to new islands with the devil trying to stop them at every turn. Or heck, maybe even go with the original story where they are forced to work for the devil, and that's the excuse they have to travel to new islands.
And to owe the devil your soul! I ain't too worried about it.
Make it so the bosses act as a monster of the week kind of thing. Take us a bit more seriously, maybe. Even make each boss a two-parter, perhaps. There's 3 islands in the game, not including the delicious last course. Then you can make that a 3-season show with a big epic battle with the devil at the end. Remember that Cuphead and Mugman had, powers? Yeah. Me neither! I get there's potential for it to be in the upcoming seasons, but season 1 made me feel like this. Why should I tune into the next season? Fucking bruh, I got Farscape to watch, dude. Look at him go. Woo, yeah. Look at him go. Wee, go Rigel. No! The last thing I kind of want to talk about is the style. Now, I might get shit for this, but the style of the Cuphead show is not interesting. It's got some great backgrounds, I'll not shit on that at all, but the way the characters look and move, again, just comes off as fine. Is it badly animated? Not at all, but it does not reflect the look of the game. Sure, the character designs look like the characters in the game, but damn, I would have loved it if it was animated with the same style the game was. Could you imagine how much conversation would generate around the show if they actually went with the traditional hand-drawn style the game went for?
Basically says, idiots! I will be king!
I know it would have been a lot of effort, but, don't know if you know this. I'm gonna lay you in on a secret. Great things kind of require effort put into them, dude. Are you telling me something funded by Netflix of all things couldn't afford to go with a traditional style for this? Why? I genuinely want to know why a game that was created by like a small team of people did a better job with the look over a company of professional animators. I know it's a big ask, but if you wanted the show to stand out visually, that's what you would have done. In general though, the games have some crazy abstract visuals. Look at the backgrounds in the King Dice fight. They're amazing and breathe so much life into the game. The Cuphead show, on the other hand, doesn't get experimental with the style at all. I love animation that's crazy creative with its visuals, and while I wouldn't want this every episode, the Cuphead show doesn't want to do that at all. You know, a lot of those old 1930s cartoons were weird. Why hasn't that been carried over from those old films? The closest Cuphead truly gets to being visually interesting to me is that episode in the graveyard. There's some cool stuff in it, but not enough to give the show the strong abstract identity it could have had. At least the song was good though, and the opening song too, I liked it quite a bit. I won't mess with the soundtrack because they did actually put a few of the game's songs in there. And if you know me, I love the Cuphead game soundtrack. It's absolutely one of my favourites. Listen to it in your own time, it's great. For the final comparison of video game adaptations, I'm going to take a look at one of the most recent ones from Netflix, Arcane. Now, I know Arcane is basically considered the magnum opus of video game adaptations at this point. It takes the lore of the original source and presents it in the best way it could have. The characters are so interesting and, dare I say, deep and amazingly well written. This transcends video game adaptations and will go down as one of the greatest animated series of all time. No hyperbole there. But ignoring the great narrative for just a second, let's look at the presentation. It's gorgeous. The regular style was already amazing, but the show is directed so amazingly. There are so many interesting shots that get across the scenes so well. And the style gets really ambitious and creative when it wants to be. One of the final fights on a bridge just shifts style and looks really damn cool. Ugh, why does League of Legends of all things have a show this good? I hate it. In conclusion, the Cuphead show is far below the standards of a good video game adaptation or a good children's cartoon. Want a good kids show on Netflix? Go watch the first season of Green Eggs and Ham. A show based on a Dr. Seuss book for actual babies is more creative, more charming, and more interesting than the entirety of the Cuphead show. It even manages to tell a more compelling story beginning to end. Like, talk about creative liberties with the source material. The Cuphead show isn't bad, it just never comes close to reaching its full potential. And that's sad. Thank you for sticking around, we're still growing this channel, so please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, like the video, comment below, and do everything the algorithm likes. We'd really appreciate it here at Dreary Middle Incorporated.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel powerful.